Should I start talking like this from
If
now
it
on?
if it doesn't put a strain on your vocal cords, go right ahead.
Well, it doesn't. It's just really stupid. I just feel so dumb talking like this.
You sound
But
like Wolfman Jack.
I'm Wolfman Jack.
Uh,
Oh man, I podcasting's fun. Okay, so yeah, what did you do this week, man? What have you been up to?
Nothing much. The usual, watching movies and stuff like that. I did finally watch something I probably should have watched before we did our top films of the year list a few weeks
Oh
back,
yeah, yeah.
and that was Shoplifters
Oh,
by
oh,
Hirokazu Koreeda, and yeah, it made my top 10.
amazing, amazing.
I had to make an amendment to my top 10
Yeah.
because it is that good of a movie.
And this was your first Koreeda film, right?
It was my first film from him, and I want to see all of the other ones now.
Yeah.
I got to get my hands on them. The problem is trying to track them down because
Some
they're
of
not
yeah,
too.
some of
Yeah,
them don't have releases and good releases, and some of them are I mean, some of them are a little pricey. Like
they
it's
are
a matter of putting some money down on them. But
very true. And sadly, Shoplifters just came out, but only on DVD,
yeah,
which I think is a big insult
I
in
don't know what the hell.
2019.
Hopefully, maybe that just means that maybe a label maybe picked it up. Maybe
Yeah,
somebody else picked it up and it was a last minute thing, and now like Criterion or somebody some label's gonna put it out. That's my hope.
hopefully. Unfortunately, we probably won't see something like that for like a
It's gonna be
year
like
or two.
Columbus. It's gonna be like Columbus last year.
It took Columbus like 2 years to come out on Blu-ray here in the States,
Yeah, it's
and
ridiculous.
it's technically not even out yet.
I mean, it was technically. I think it was more like a year.
But I
Like,
mean, like, yeah. Well,
I mean,
it's
it
coming
came
out in
out and then
March,
it took
right?
like almost a little over a full year to finally get some kind of release, and then now it's finally getting an American release
Yeah, that's what I meant
here
with the
next.
release here in the States. It's
Yeah,
been like
yeah,
2 years.
yeah,
Um, I almost forget that we're in 2019 and
yeah.
that 2017 was 2 years ago and not 1 year ago. So I watched that and yeah, I absolutely loved it. It's exactly what you had described it to me as
Yeah.
an Ozu film dealing with family type things, but taking the family dynamic and looking at it in a unique way.
A
Um,
modern society, kind of looking at the other side of society in Japan, which apparently is
right.
not something they do a lot, and a lot of filmmakers do in that country. They a lot of times don't really look at that side of society. So he
Yes,
wanted
that's
to do
true.
that. So
And I also watched another, I guess you could say, foreign film by a Canadian director. That was Denis Villeneuve's Incendies,
ooh,
which came out in 2010. So
mm,
that was before he broke out with Prisoners and the other film, and Arrival and
enemy
Blade
and
Runner, and the other film that
enemy.
Enemy, which
Yeah.
I love. I'm the only one who really loves that movie. But yeah, Incendies is amazing.
Hmm.
Like it's an astonishing film. Like I don't know why it took me,
It's okay.
9 years to see it,
We
you
all
know?
we all have the movies that we like want to see, and we just don't get around to them.
And then when we do, we're just, like,
Oh,
completely,
where was I?
"Where was I? What was I doing? Where have I
Yeah,
been all this
I mean,
time?"
it was only a couple of maybe 2 or 3 years ago when I finally watched the Godfather movies. Like
Yeah.
only yeah, so it's like
But I mean, like, that was something that came out well before your time. Like, this came out,
sure,
when I was alive, when I was, like,
sure.
23. Yeah. But, yeah, so I watched that the other night because I had the Blu-ray sitting on my shelf for a while, and I was like, "You know what? I'll just pop it in." And then once it was on, I was glued to it for
Yeah,
the 2 hours and 10 minutes that it was running, and I was just shocked by the level of amazingness that that movie gave off. The acting, the storytelling, the cinematography, it has all those Villeneuve things that we've come to know, but they're kind of in their earlier form, you know what
yeah.
I mean?
He's gonna
And
hopefully get
really good.
his chance at an Oscar here someday.
I
Which
thought Arrival was pretty close. I
oh
mean,
yeah, it was the closest he's gotten so far, I think. But I think he's gonna get it one day. He's going.
right,
It's bound to happen. And of course that's a really good segue into
it
our
is.
discussion of this episode. We're at this moment a week away from the 91st Oscars,
We are.
and so we decided this week we wanted to kind of go back in time as we do a lot, and kind of talk a little bit about the history of the Oscars, where it started, some little tidbits about the origins of the Oscars or the Academy Awards as they officially are called, and then kind of just give a little bit of talk, just briefly talk about some of our favorite and least favorite movies that have been awarded Oscars.
Yeah.
And but before we get into that, we're gonna talk some current events with.
Oh yes, we do, because we have current Oscar award ceremony messiness to get into, and it all really happened within the last week since our last episode.
Yeah, I mean, and even before that, this year's Oscars has been plagued with just ridiculousness. Like,
right.
If people don't know, over the last few, many years now, the ratings for the Oscars have slowly dipped and dipped and dipped. It's because people, honestly don't want to stay. A lot of people don't want to watch a 3.5-hour show. And if you live on the East Coast, it usually ends over a little bit past midnight, which is late for people. So
yeah, and they air it on a Sunday night. Yeah. The next day is a work day for every adult, school day for children. Yeah. Children typically don't stay up till past midnight. At least I didn't when I was younger. Now I do, of course. But for me and Steven, it's not a big deal. We're going to watch it. For the regular crowd, the general crowd, the interest in it has gone way down. And the Academy has taken several steps in order to kind of, boost the popularity or boost whatever, just to get people interested in it.
You could say
it hasn't gone well.
Yeah, you could say their first shot at that was back in 2009, right? Which is when they upped the categories up to 10, which is something they'd done before. Back in the day, that they had that many nominations, and then sometime I think during the 60s. Maybe it was earlier than that.
I think it was the 30s.
Or was it that far back?
Okay. Where they went down to the typical five nominees. But they decided in 2009 we're going to expand it out to as many as 10, and their voting system was going to be different. They've actually since changed it since then to where now I guess a movie needs to get like a certain percentage to be nominated.
Usually 8 or 9 get nominated.
Right. And then a lot of reasons why they did that was because The Dark Knight was the most popular movie of 2008 and wasn't nominated for Best Picture. Yeah, and they got a lot of crap for it.
Not even just by critics, but by people,
Yeah, it was like one of the most critically acclaimed films and the most popular, and the Academy didn't nominate it for Best Picture because there's only so many slots. So they decided to expand it out. And that 2009 list is interesting. You've got, I believe, Toy Story 3 was nominated up in there, and District 9 was nominated in there. The problem with doing a 9-film list is some of them that are close to, some of them that are at the bottom are just kind of outliers that, like, wow, that's probably not going to win, but they just put it in there because it's a good enough film. You know what I mean? But currently they've done other things to try to make it better. They went with they wanted to go with a younger host a few years ago when they went with James Franco and Anne Hathaway, 2 young, stars, and that ended up being notoriously a very bad ceremony for several reasons. One, James Franco kind of quit in the middle of it. He may or may not have smoked marijuana during the ceremony. We're not quite sure. But Anne Hathaway tried her best. She tried her best to carry that show. And then, of course, I believe there was a lockout year where things were a bit messy there because they had a writer's strike. So that show was kind of a mess in and of itself. I think that may have been the year that Hugh Jackman hosted. I'm not quite sure.
It might have been, yeah.
Anywho,
there was a lot of. I mean, they've tried to find the right. Usually, they try to rely on the host to be the thing that brings in the people, and in class and traditionally using comedians, or late night, one of these late night hosts, or sometimes comedians too. Billy Crystal is usually a very popular one.
Yeah, he was one who did it several times in the 80s and 90s. Jimmy Kimmel did the last 2 years. Yeah, I mean, they had Seth MacFarlane a few years ago. That was the bit
one of my favorite ones.
It was one that was raunchy to say the
It
least.
was raunchy, but at least it had some edge. I like
It
the
had
edge.
edge to it. It had edge to it. I believe they used I can't remember his name.
Ellen
They've used Ellen
Ellen
DeGeneres a few times. They've used I can't remember Doogie Howser. I can't remember his name.
Oh, and Neil Patrick Harris.
Neil Patrick Harris. I always call him Doogie Howser because I used to watch that show when I was a kid. He's since gone on to do many other things, but
yes, of course.
he'll always be Doogie Howser to me. They tried to use him, and in this year, man,
it was going to be Mr. Kevin Hart.
It was going to be Kevin Hart, and then they discovered that he had very homophobic tweets about 10 years or so ago.
Yeah, during this movement,
it was a huge backlash.
During this movement of PC culture that we're living on, where people are getting attacked for things that they did many years ago. I'm not excusing their behavior, but these people have usually since apologized for it, and apparently in this case he'd also apologized for it before, and then basically they were asking him to apologize again,
and he wouldn't do it initially. And then he kind of gave one of those non-apologies apologies,
backhanded,
Anywho, so he decided, I'm not going to do it because I'm getting so much backlash for it. It's just not worth it.
Yeah.
And basically they couldn't get anyone else because nobody wants to be in that spotlight or have that pressure or anything like that. And there were rumors that they may rehire Kevin Hart to do it, but then that never happened.
Yeah.
So now we have a hostless Oscars, which is not the first. Not the first time this has happened, but I believe it notoriously happened back in 1988. I want to say it had a hostless Oscars, and apparently it didn't go very well. Not a good show. Shockingly, when you have a rudderless ship, you don't really go anywhere meaningful. So that's going to be very interesting. But this actually started. This kind of Academy Awards current mess started when they wanted to introduce the popular movie category.
Oh my God.
And people heard about this and were like, what is this, the People's Choice Awards? What is this here?
I mean, it gets into that conversation of just, I mean, look, I mean, we all know these films, art is subjective, and awards in general are just kind of honestly could be a little bit ridiculous, like it's art, like to award these awards to art, which is all, everybody's opinion anyway, is kind of ridiculous. But, since it is a thing, why are we lessening our apparently, which is supposed to be it's supposed to be the top award show of the year, and giving it an award based around popularity?
Yeah, popularity isn't something that you can evaluate. You know what I mean? It's not like you can't like that piece of art is popular, therefore it's good. You know what I mean? Like these are supposed to have artistic merit to it. For me, I think the Academy Awards have thrown that whole artistic merit thing in the waste bin years ago.
Once the ratings started going down, and now they're making things all about ratings.
Yeah. Now it's getting, even before then, you've heard all kinds of rumors going back decades of people bribing people for votes and winning Oscars based off of, like, yet again, popularity and campaigning. It's very political. How much it really is based on how much money and effort a studio puts behind a film or a person, all that kind of stuff. This is no big surprise. Harvey Weinstein was notoriously good at doing this back in the 90s, which is why a lot of people think his films that he was part of, producing and whatnot, distributing, got so many awards at the time, particularly Shakespeare in Love winning Best Picture over Saving Private Ryan, or even The English Patient also winning Best Picture, stuff like that. And we've come to know that Harvey Weinstein is pretty much a terrible person, so that's not out of the realm of possibilities.
Definitely sounds about right.
Yeah, definitely sounds about right for somebody whose morality apparently doesn't exist. So that happened, and then they put the whole kibosh on that. No popular movie category this year. Keep that in mind because they may return to it. But then they decided, okay, like Steven said, this is a 3-hour plus show. We got to get it down to 3 hours max. We got to get it to 180 minutes.
And I mean, to an extent, I understand that. I think that they need to find a way to tighten the show up a little bit. For general audiences, if I'm not just being selfish and not care, because I honestly, like we said, we don't care. We will watch this show no matter how long it is.
I
But
can understand from a business perspective why
yeah,
they want to
they
do
got to
it.
tighten it up.
Right.
So
Go on.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, now they're deciding that they want to show some categories and not all of it.
Yeah,
Like
here we go.
yeah,
So there's 24 categories to get through currently, and they wanted to do 4 of them during commercial breaks, so
yeah,
therefore they wouldn't be live on television, but they were going to be broadcasted later on in the broadcast. They were going to be shown later on in the broadcast in kind of an edited down form. They won't
yeah.
show people coming up to the stage. They probably will cut out a little bit of the banter, I guess, with the presenters. I don't know how they were going to cut this out, but anywho, they were going to show it later, and they were also going. They also said, "Oh, it's going to be live on YouTube as well, or live on their stream on the Academy Awards website." But this led to a huge backlash this week,
Yeah.
where actors, directors, producers, people like us, fans, just really took a huge dump all over the Academy Awards for this. They really did. Social media was aflame, and there was nothing from the Academy Awards. There was no response on Twitter since the announcement. There was just kind of radio silence. And then the ASC, which is the Cinematographers Association, wrote a very strongly worded letter, against this. And then apparently members of the ASC met with members of the Academy, the head of the Academy, and it was decided that the Academy is going to air every single category live during the broadcast, which means the broadcast will be once again over 3 hours long.
Yeah.
So
Well,
they had to
yeah.
walk that back.
Well, it's honestly, I think we've said this before. If there's anything you want to get rid of the songs, man. I mean, like, look, they're still nominated. Do we have to perform all the songs?
They wanted to do that as well. They were initially only going to do 2 of the songs performances. 'Cause I think there's 4
The thing is,
nominations.
like,
I'm not sure.
I know why they want to do them. I know they want to do them because they think that it'll bring ratings in. That if they perform these songs, especially like this year with Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper, like do that song "Shallow" is probably something people would want to see. But didn't they do that shit at the Grammys too, or something? Didn't they already do that once?
No,
she did it. I don't think Bradley Cooper did. I think she performed the song though.
I know the movie actually won a Grammy. Okay, actually won a couple of Grammys.
Yeah.
So Bradley Cooper has a Grammy now. If anybody,
I know, right? It's crazy.
So he's really close to getting that coveted EGOT.
Yeah,
I think all he needs is he needs an Oscar, and he needs a Tony, and he needs an Emmy.
There you go. Yeah. The thing is they can do what they said they wanted to do with these categories and do them with the performances. You don't need to show these performances live.
I know. I know you've been saying that for a while. And I know there's a lot of people who actually love the performances. They love the musical performances. So therefore they were upset when they were only going to do 2 of them because it's not right for the other nominees and all that kind of stuff. It's a tough, tightrope to walk, because what do you get rid of? How do you tighten this up? I don't think airing the 4 categories during commercials is the right thing to do, because even if they said they were going to air them later on during the broadcast anyways. So are you really losing that much time? You know what I mean?
It wouldn't make up for much time. And secondly, it's obvious, it's disrespectful to the people that work on the movies in them categories.
Right.
Like, you're saying that these are not as important. And
the categories were best cinematography, best editing, which are quite possibly 2 of the most important things for filmmaking.
I think most directors would say cinematography is like the most important thing. And then secondary to that, editing is how you make your movie.
Yeah, editing is literally where the movie is made. Yeah. And the other 2 were I believe it was
makeup and hairstyling.
And then the last one was, I think it was best live action short film.
Live action short, yeah.
And it's very interesting how they were going to, do that one, and like the live action short was going to get snubbed, but the other short films were going to get put on air. I don't know who made the decision to, pick these 4 specific categories. I don't know whether it's just because where they where they were slotted to show up during the broadcast.
Yeah.
You know, that those were the opportune times to have commercials, I guess. I don't really know. But all I know is all of it's been corrected back, and we're back to square one, minus a host, which could lead to literally any type of shenanigans happening.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very interesting. Are we just going to hand, you know, cue cards to celebrities and they're going to start talking? Or is there just going to be a narrator, you know, saying, and next coming up to present the category of whatever is, you know,
The
such
thing
and
is,
such.
man, I mean, like, look, I like a good host. I like it to be,
I
like,
do.
you know, but thing is like another idea for these video packages they put together. A lot of times they're super long.
They are.
That takes up a lot of time in the show. Take some of that shit away. Like there's ways to tighten this show up, and you guys are picking some of the dumbest ways.
Yeah, I think also
Why
a
do
lot
they
of
think
the shit, shenanigans, but not shenanigans, but kind of the stunts that they pull in the middle of the show. Some of them work, some of them don't, and you know, if you want to cut something, you could cut those. You know, remember the one where they had the people who were on like the Hollywood tour be brought in a few years ago?
Yeah.
There was one where Ellen DeGeneres brought the pizza delivery guy on stage, and she handed out pizza to all the
She went around
celebrities.
in the
I mean,
crowd
these are
and did
all
all
fun. The
selfie
selfies.
thing. Yeah.
These are fun things to do, and they bring a lot of levity to the award show. But I mean, they're things you could lose if you want to sacrifice time.
Sure.
Granted, they're all, you know, it's all subjective. Some people love them, some people don't.
But like we've said since the beginning, we liked it. We're fine. We get it.
They're fine.
We're fine with it. I'll watch it. I'll stay up late on a work night.
Yeah, I'll be up late watching it myself. But with all that being said about the current show, let's go all the way back to the first Academy Awards. All the way back in the cinema discovery machine to the late 1920s, towards the end of the silent era. And the first Academy Award presentation was on May 16th, 1929, at a private dinner at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel with about 270 people.
I mean, just think about that.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. And it wasn't broadcast on, there was no TV at the time.
No.
And it wasn't even on the radio.
Nope. Just think about it. You can go up the street to your hotel, like big, nice hotel, like, you know, like a Holiday Inn Express. And that's where they had the first Oscars. Like a nice holiday.
I think it was a little more swanky than that.
But, I don't know, man. I mean, back then, you know, they probably.
Yeah, this was put on by Louis B. Mayer, who was the head of MGM at the time, because by that point, they had already merged to create MGM. Louis B. Mayer's company and a couple other companies already merged to create MGM. And he is actually kind of the founder of the Academy Awards, because he founded the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, which is AMPAS, which still exists today. And at the time, it was a way to celebrate kind of the 5 big branches of filmmaking. You know, directing and cinematography,
acting.
but they called it engineering, but it was acting and writing and stuff like that. And there's since been many facets grown since. But if you notice on the Academy Award statue itself, he is sitting on a reel of film that has the 5 holes in them to represent the original 5 categories, if you will. Not categories, but, you know, facets of filmmaking and all that kind of stuff. So he was kind of the founder of the Academy Awards, and the ticket for that Academy Awards was $5. But $5 in 1929 is the equivalent of like $73 today. So a bit of an expensive piece back then.
Not too bad for the movie stars.
Yeah, no, 270 people. There were only 12 categories at the time. And the award ceremony itself only lasted about 15 minutes. And you may be wondering why it only lasted 15 minutes. Well, that is because the awards winners were announced 3 months earlier. So
they just handed
everybody
out trophies.
knew. They were literally just handing out trophies and getting to an after party.
So it was more like a little league soccer game or baseball game, where like at the end of the year you get like participation trophies, and you're just like, here, you get a trophy and you get a trophy. So it's
kind of but there were of course nominees.
Yeah.
There were of course winners. the categories back then were worded differently, and there was much different than they were now. You know, they of course they had outstanding picture, which was best picture. They had best unique and artistic picture, which was different than best picture. Um, they had two best director categories. They had best director for a comedy picture and best director for a dramatic picture. And I think this was the only year that they did that. I think they got rid of that after this year. And of course, they had best actor, best actress, best original story, best adaptation, which of course it would
Yeah.
evolve into what we know as they are now. Best art direction, which is now known as best production design.
Yeah.
That actually changed in like 2012.
I was
So
gonna
that is
say
a
it wasn't
recent
that long
change.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a recent change. Best cinematography, which we know, best engineering effects, and best title writing. I'm guessing opening titles.
Credits.
Credits, I'm
Yeah.
assuming, which is something they don't have now. Honorary awards at the time was given to Charlie Chaplin, and of course, and I think Warner Brothers production for producing The Jazz Singer, which had I think it was the first sound film, The Jazz Singer.
Yeah.
And this is very, very small, very, very small compared to what we know as it is now. Wings won Best Picture that year. It is the first Best Picture winner. It is the only silent film to win Best Picture. It is
No,
also,
well, technically
don't
it's
say
not.
it. Don't say it.
It's the artist.
The artist
also.
the artist had talking at the end of it. Apparently, you didn't get all the way through the artist to see that
I didn't.
moment.
No, I didn't even see. I haven't even seen the movie.
Oh, really?
No, I haven't even seen it. I just assumed it was a complete silent movie because that's what they were making it out to be.
It is all the way up until the very, very end. So I would watch that if you are so inclined to.
I'm sorry, 95% silent film or whatever.
That is true. If you're wondering, where is some of the categories we know today? Best animated feature wasn't introduced until 2001. For the films coming out in 2001. Best foreign language film wasn't introduced until 1957. So that's kind of a current one. There are other categories that are since been discontinued, if you will. They had a best assistant director category. Which is, assistant directors don't get enough love.
Or second unit director,
yeah, I guess, they don't get enough love in general.
No.
Yeah, right. And that was from 1932-33 awards, because in the first couple of award ceremonies, they were grouped into 2-year intervals versus the 1 year we have now. Like for example, all the movies that are nominated in the awards in a week are all from 2018. So all the ones for next year will be for 2019. The first several award ceremonies were grouped into like 2-year couplets, basically. And that happened for a little while. That happened all the way up until 1934, I believe, or 1933. Don't quote me on that. I have to look that up. But other categories that I just find fascinating is best dance direction. They had from 1935 to 1937. The thing is
back then there were a lot more musicals were in production.
Yes.
So that was kind of a regular thing.
Let's see. Best musical or comedy score, they actually had from 1995 to 1998. So that's kind of more recent. Best, a lot of short subject things that they've kind of consolidated. They had best short subject, one reel from 1936 to 1956. Best short subject, 2 reel, 1936 to 1956. Best short subject color, best short subject comedy, best short subject novelty. So there was a lot of short film love that they've since gotten rid of, and all of those were in like the 30s for a couple of years, and kind of they got rid of.
Back in the day, they also had a juvenile award for.
They did have a juvenile, and that was like a special one. It wasn't even like you weren't even nominated for that. It was just like
honorary Oscars are now.
Yeah, it was an honorary Oscar.
They only did it maybe 5 or 6 times. It was Shirley Temple.
They did it from 34 to 1960. So there were quite a few.
Yeah, Shirley Temple, Mickey Rooney, Dana Durnan, Judy Garland, Margaret O'Brien were the ones that won that award.
Yeah.
So
Judy
it's
Garland.
that's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one. Well, I want to talk about her a little later because I think she's going to fall under the category of very well-known people who never won Oscars.
Yeah, yeah.
Unfortunately, we want to get into those later on because there are a lot of prominent people that you associate with being huge, iconic people in the history of cinema in the 20th century, and they never really got the awards consideration that you thought they did.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting kind of putting into the perspective of how important are awards really. You know what I mean?
Well, I guess what would be good right now, if it's okay, to
Uh-huh.
transition to a little bit of the origins of the statue itself.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll
You
talk
know,
about the quote unquote Oscar statue.
Yeah. So
because this wasn't actually called an Oscar until later on.
Yeah, they initially, at first, when the idea came up about giving out something, they didn't even know what they were going to give out. Were they going to give a plaque out? Were they going to give some kind of certificate? So when the idea came to them by a designer, it was designed by, I had the name here, Edgar Bergman designed it, and then it was put together by George Stanley. I'm sorry, it's Cedric Gibbons designed it, and George Stanley put it together.
Yeah,
and
he's the sculptor.
Yeah, he sculpted what the it still looks like today. And so there's a mystery behind the statue about
the naming of it.
Yeah, who came up with the name. Betty Davis, who was actually kind of part of the she was a president of the Academy Awards at the time. She said that she came up with the name based off of her first husband.
Yeah, she said the
rear end,
the butt of the statue looked like her husband's rear end, so she called it an Oscar.
Yeah. Which is my favorite. That one sounds like a lie. The other one is Margaret Henrick. She was a executive secretary for the Academy, and she had a cousin who she had a nickname for as Uncle Oscar. That she had used. I guess this was back in 1931. So that's kind of the earliest I think we've heard in connection to the statue and whatnot. Also, a columnist named Sidney Skolsky had put it in an article he had written. So yeah, I mean, there's no rule for sure. I mean, even Walt Disney called it, an Oscar in 1932. So like, we're not really sure who necessarily came up with the name Oscar, but I think that the secretary Margaret Henrick sounds like the legit one for me. Because Betty Davis, I think, is just an actress, and
that sounds a little far fetched.
Yeah,
but what is interesting about the Oscar is the statue itself is not solid gold. It's actually when they because I watched a video of them making the mold and making the actual statue, and it just showed how it was made. And its initial mold is done in metal. Yeah. It's a metal statue that is dipped in like nickel and silver, and then it's finally dipped in 24 karat gold. So it's essentially like plated in 24 karat gold. It's still shiny as hell, and it's still very nice.
Yeah, I heard it actually costs like $250 or something like that.
Really? We should buy one, Steven.
You should get one, man. I just want one right here. I'll hold it all the time.
Yeah, and then like years from now, people well, I'll ask you, man, how did you win that Oscar? And you just make up just crazy stories oh yeah, I directed one of the most popular things ever, or my short film won, or whatever. What is also interesting about the Oscar is each Oscar, of course, has a plaque on it or a plate on it that says Academy Award for Best Director. And I believe it has the name of the winner. And initially, when these were done, is when you won the award, you had to give it back to the Academy, and the Academy would take it somewhere, do the etching for the plating and everything, put it on, send it back to you. Now what they do since 2009 is when you go to the governor's ball afterward, the after party is they literally do it right there. Yeah. It takes a couple of minutes, and you go up to a person wearing an absurdly fancy outfit for working machinery, and they etch your name in, and they do the whole thing, and they screw it on and whatever, and the award is yours, and you can take it home. What is interesting about the award itself is sometimes the older awards, they end up on auction somewhere, or they end up
Yeah.
on in pawn shops. People have sold them because they've fallen on hard times. I know there have been many celebrities and people in the film industry who have bought uh, Oscars on auction and then returned them to the Academy because they didn't feel that it was right to own them, or they didn't feel
Yeah.
like it was right for these things to be out and being sold. I'm pretty sure Steven Spielberg's done this a couple of times, and I'm pretty sure Steven Spielberg has bought Betty Davis's like original Oscar that she won for Of Human Bondage in the 30s, and he's returned it to
Wow.
um, the Academy Awards. I'm not sure about that. I believe Leo DiCaprio's done that as well, but sometimes that happens. And technically, you're not supposed to sell these things, but even though you own them, they're still technically kind of pseudo properties of the Academy. So you're not supposed to do that. But people fall on
Oh,
hard times or
screw
whatever.
them.
And then, but I'm saying, if I win an Academy Award, I'm doing
Oh, well, I mean, if you get
whatever.
one from, and I meant to say this,
Yeah.
if you had gotten an Oscar from during the wartime, they were actually made of plaster, so they probably
Yes, they were,
probably
because
wouldn't have been worth very much.
they didn't have the materials to make them.
Yeah.
To make them, with the metal and the gold and plating and all that kind of stuff. So they would give them plaster. And I don't know if you know this, plaster is not the greatest, most durable material ever.
Great.
And so afterward, once the war was over and the materials were back to be available, they would, remake them and give them
Yeah.
away. They still had the Academy Awards during World War II. There were still ceremonies still happening, even though a lot of filmmakers and actors and actresses did a lot for the war effort. Some actually fought in World War II. Some died in World War II.
William Wyler, who was a director, was fighting in the war.
Yeah, there were, there's that great, documentary from not last year, I think the year before, The Five Who Came Back, about the 5 filmmakers who went there and just made, films during the war. They went to, they showed, they recorded battles. They went to concentration camps, and a lot of them were horribly, traumatized by what they saw. So Hollywood has had a really intricate relationship with politics pretty much from the very beginning.
Yeah.
So that's why today, when everyone is like, "Oh, why are the Oscars being so political? Why is Hollywood and actors and actresses talking out and being so political?" It's been inherently involved in Hollywood for pretty much forever.
Politics have been in film forever.
The Academy Awards have been heavily involved in politics several times. Most prominently, probably most well known, is when Marlon Brando won his Academy Award for The Godfather.
Was it okay.
Was for The Godfather, and he sent a Native American woman in his stead to not receive the award, but reject the award outright because of Hollywood's treatment of the Native American and in movies and whatnot, which of course hasn't been great. They were always seen as savages and just awful, antagonists and whatnot. They were actually often played by white people in really tan makeup and whatnot. So that was a big thing. There was a lot of other political speeches as well that are very, very interesting, because there's probably going to be a lot more political. Excuse me. There's probably going to be a lot of more political speeches coming up very, very soon, especially in the current climate we are in.
The thing is it doesn't necessarily bother me, but sometimes it becomes a little too much. Like, everybody seems to have something they want to say, and shit. That's another reason the damn Oscars go on so long. Damn people got these damn speeches that last 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I think people need to be better prepared if they win. And I understand you don't want to go in being cocky, being like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to win, so I'm going to write this lovely, heartwarming speech." And then when you don't win, you just kind of rip it up and throw it away. But that being a little more prepared and more concise and understanding, writing down who you want to thank and all that kind of stuff and what you want to say is important. What is interesting now that we have social media, and it's social media so prominent that you literally have a gigantic platform every single moment of every single day to get your political thoughts out there if you are a celebrity. So you don't necessarily have to do it at the Oscars. You know what I mean? That it's not like, 10, 20 years ago where that was literally the only place where millions of people would be gathered to watch at one time. Now you can literally contact millions of people through a couple of clicks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There have been, and where else do we want to go? I think
I
I
don't know.
want. I think I want to talk about. Well, something I do want to mention is that there were 2 cinematography awards that were given out between 1939 and I believe and into the 1960s, I believe, because they wanted to award both cinematography for black and white films as well
Yeah,
as
yeah.
cinematography for color films, films that were in color, because color was kind of this brand new thing in the 1930s. And what is interesting about that is the only film to win an Oscar that is shot entirely in black and white is Schindler's List, since they've
Yeah.
gotten rid of having those 2 different categories. Which who knows, this year that could change.
That definitely, yeah.
If Roma wins this year, then that could definitely change.
Or if Cold War wins for
Oh,
cinematography.
yeah, or if Cold War wins, that could also happen. Let's talk about something I want to talk about, and that is biggest Oscar upsets.
Yeah, yeah.
Just because,
It's always
as
a
we
fun
know,
subject.
there can only really be one winner.
Yeah, yeah.
And sometimes there are ties. Sometimes there are ties. Remember a few years ago? I can't even remember. A few years ago, the only Oscar that Zero Dark 30 won was tied with something else, and it was like best sound design or sound mixing. I can't remember. Um, I'm just a big fan of Zero Dark 30, so I was upset that that movie did not win more Oscars. But predominantly, a lot of upsets are more remembered for the best picture category than for the other categories. For me, and one of the most notorious is I don't know if I've said it before on the podcast, but I've said it before somewhere out there, and that is Citizen Kane not winning Best Picture over the film How Green Was My Valley,
Yeah, yeah.
because Citizen Kane is literally considered one of the greatest films ever made, or in many people's cases, the greatest film ever made.
Yeah.
So looking back in retrospect, that film losing has got to be one of the biggest upsets ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, one of the I think, and a lot of times, of course, with hindsight, it's easier to
Yeah,
to
it
to,
is.
to say, "Hey, that was dumb," because for me, something like, and this is obvious, I'm probably in the minority here, but I'm not a big fan of Annie Hall, and it also came out the same year as Star Wars that got nominated, and as you can see, a lot more people were talking about Star Wars than we're talking about Annie Hall, I think.
Right. That's
So
what is interesting that when you look back at Best Picture winners is they're very in tune with the time in which they came out, and a lot of them don't have lasting effect. Do you know what I mean? Like they don't.
yeah, I mean,
They're, they,
sometimes they're very much they're not thinking about, wow, this is a benchmark in time. This could be the set of something new. They're more like, oh, we're gonna let win what always wins. The
yeah.
biopic movie, or the same old shit.
Right.
Because the Oscars are kind of set in their ways a lot. They have to be punched in the face by society.
Yeah,
To
and a lot of that has been, I think, from the 1980s up until now. I think the 1980s, I think, is a specific time where we saw films winning Best Picture that don't feel like they are specifically connected with the time in which they came out in. That's
yeah.
when you get a lot of like biopics, period pieces, things like that. You get, Chariots of Fire won Best Picture, Amadeus won Best Picture, Out of Africa won Best Picture. That was Driving Miss Daisy, I think, won at the end of that. Gandhi won. These are all, fine movies. But when I think of the 1980s, culturally, when it comes to pop culture and just what is going on, there's such a disconnect with what films were being nominated for Best Picture at that
nothing
time.
feels like it's connected to the time it was in.
It doesn't, and that's when you get a lot of the films that I think have been considered quote unquote Oscar films, or even by today's standards, Oscar bait type movies. One, they have to be dramas. They have to be biopics, period pieces, typically, downer films, sad films. And they also really love films where people have physical transformations, whether it be someone who is dealing with a physical handicap or in some cases a mental handicap.
My left foot,
My
which I
left
don't think
foot.
won,
It
but
didn't win
he
best
won.
picture, but he
but that-
won.
Yeah, he won. Yeah.
Then one of the more famous films for that, of course, is Forrest Gump, which did win Best Picture over both Pulp Fiction and Shawshank Redemption.
Also, Rain Man.
Rain Man won Best Picture as well. I still think that's a great film.
It's a good movie. It's solid, but I don't think. I mean, if I could look at what the nominees were, I bet you I could find something that was better.
Oh, I'll find it for you.
Find it for me real quick.
I'm right. Yeah, Rain Man won in the year. Was nominated the year with The Accidental Tourist, which I haven't seen.
I've seen it.
Dangerous Liaisons, which I have seen.
Yeah.
Mississippi Burning, which
better.
May be the more film that has withstood the test of time.
Yeah.
And then finally Working Girl, which is another film that's probably stood the test of time. Mississippi Burning seems
like the more once
in
again
hindsight,
a movie that actually, I mean, that movie I think takes place in the 60s maybe. Right. I don't think that movie's in the set in present day, but like it's still a very relevant movie.
Yeah, it's still a film that has withstood the test of time a lot longer. And granted, at the time, you're not thinking 20, 30, 40 years in the future, Is this film still going to be relevant in 40 years? That's why we should give it the Oscar. No, we're not thinking that. We're looking
great performance in Rain Man.
Of course.
Dustin Hoffman's great, but it's I don't know, it's a little bit forgettable.
And you have other films of that decade, like The Last Emperor, which is another biopic. It's a film I really love, by Bernardo Bertolucci. You have Platoon, which is Oliver Stone's best film, arguably. What else is it? What's that?
Color Purple.
It didn't win Best Picture.
Well, I mean, I was going to actually say...
You're just throwing things out.
Yeah, well, no. I meant I thought it did win, but I guess I forgot that it did.
It was actually nominated the same year as Out of Africa.
Yeah, I was gonna say this was a big. I mean, like Spielberg finally won for Schindler's List, but almost all his stuff got nominated in the 80s, like E.T., Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yep.
The
Color Purple,
which I think was still in the 70s, but
that was still in the 70s. But Color Purple, like you said.
Yeah.
Yes, he didn't win. Yeah, you're right. Until Schindler's List, 93.
Even his movies before that, like I said, Close Encounters and Jaws were both nominated. So he was nominated for almost all his major movies throughout the 70s, going into the 80s, going into the 90s. And then even today, he still gets nominated. His movies get nominated countlessly almost every time he puts out a movie. Whether
I hate to break this to you, Stephen, but Close Encounters was not nominated.
It was nominated.
I'm looking and I'm not seeing.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm looking and I'm not seeing. I don't think it was. Let me look. I'll look. I'll look that up right away because I know Jaws was. Because I remember that there's this video on YouTube of Spielberg watching the nominations. They're announcing the nominations for that.
You're right. It's not.
Yeah, it won one Oscar. Close Encounters. It won for Best
Achievement Award. Where the hell that is?
Special Achievement Award for Frank E. Warner for sound effects editing.
I think I remembered it as it was one of his movies he got Best Director nomination for. That's probably what it was.
Yeah, he did get nominated. Damn, he got everything but a Best Picture nomination.
Yeah, which is weird. That's a pretty rare one.
How's that possible?
Yeah. It's a really great directed movie. Really film editing was great, but you're not going to get an Oscar nomination for Best Picture.
No, sir. We can't do it. Just can't do it.
It's kind of the opposite of how we talk about how there's certain movies that get Best Picture nominations but don't get a Best Director.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Argo, that happened to Argo a few years ago. Remember Ben Affleck was literally won maybe every directing award going into the Oscars where he wasn't even nominated. But he did get the Oscar because he was a producer on Argo.
Yeah.
It's very, very fascinating how that works. There have been other upsets. Kevin Costner beating Martin Scorsese for Best Director.
Well, that year in general, Goodfellas losing to Dances with Wolves is
that's another one which blows my mind. We already mentioned Forrest Gump, which is I don't know if that's necessarily an upset because I think all three of those movies.
That movie was a phenomenon when it came out.
Yeah, that's what it is. The context of when that movie came out is
also
needs to be factored in.
Yeah, Tom Hanks was like and he still is like the father of America, or so,
Yeah,
like
he's
people
American.
love Tom Hanks.
Yeah, he is.
He,
The,
didn't he already win for Philadelphia too the year
yeah,
before?
he won back-to-back years.
Yeah,
Best
yeah,
actor. Um,
yeah.
one of the biggest ones, and I'm gonna say this until I pass out or die one day. Crash winning Best Picture still
Uh,
blows my mind. Over
uh,
the films it's nominated against, shock me.
Munich.
Brokeback Mountain, Munich.
Also Munich, another Spielberg movie.
Yeah,
I mean, it's one of the worst ones ever. One that I always bring up, well, a couple that I always bring up, even though they're not necessarily upsets, they're just movies that I think are better than the ones that won. I always say E.T. should have won over Gandhi, but
that's a
probably
sentimental pick. Yeah,
that's my sentiment. I'm sorry, E.T.'s just a classic. I don't hear anybody talking about Gandhi anymore.
I know.
And then the other one is, of course, my favorite movie, L.A. Confidential, losing to Titanic. Which Titanic, it's an achievement technically, but I don't know that the movie itself was a better movie. I mean, come on.
I mean, yeah. Yet again, at the time, that movie was a phenomenon.
Yeah, it was. Everybody saw it. I mean, it made over $2 billion.
Yeah, there have been many big time iconic actors, actresses who have kind of gotten their name and their prestige based off of the award. The person who has won the most awards for an actress is Katharine Hepburn. She's won 4 times. Meryl Streep, I believe, has won 3 times. She's been nominated 21 times.
Yeah.
And she's won 3 awards. That's kind of crazy. I believe Best Actor, I want to say
Nicholson's won 3.
There's probably a tie between a bunch of them.
Nicholson and Daniel Day-Lewis.
I know Daniel Day-Lewis has won has won 3, I believe.
Him and Nicholson have the most.
Yes. Daniel Day-Lewis has 3, and he has the most. Yeah, he has 6 nominations, 3 wins. There's a bunch of people tied at 2. Spencer Tracy, Jack Nicholson, Brando, Hoffman, Gary Cooper, Tom Hanks has 2, Frederick March has 2, Sean Penn has 2.
Yeah, he won for Milk, and he won for Mystic River.
And then there are those who have the most nominations. Laurence Olivier had the most, tied with Spencer Tracy, but Laurence Olivier famously
never.
I believe he won. I'm thinking of people who didn't have any. Peter.
I mean, for the longest time until recently, Christopher Plummer hadn't won anything. He finally won. I think. Let's see. What are some of the big ones that never won? Like, I mean,
I can tell you that.
Well, I mean, if you're talking filmmakers, there's of course Alfred Hitchcock never won an Academy Award.
Yeah, Laurence Olivier has won an Oscar. He's won an honorary Oscar. He's won one for playing Hamlet, and he's won another honorary Oscar. So, yeah, he's technically won 3, 1 in competition. I don't consider honorary Oscars winning an Oscar. It
is, but it's a little bit cheating.
I like to, when I say, oh, that person's never won an Oscar, I mean they've never won one in competition. Do you know what I mean?
Did Chaplin ever win? I don't think Chaplin ever won.
He won, I want to say, an honorary Oscar.
Yeah. So he didn't win one in competition.
Yeah, Peter O'Toole, who I think is one of the greatest actors of all time, never won an Oscar in competition. He got an honorary award in 2003. He never won one in competition. He was nominated, like I said, 8 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times, including most recently in 2007, before he passed away. So yeah, he's one of the best ever. Like you said, Hitchcock never won one in competition. Akira Kurosawa never won one. Ingmar Bergman never won one. These are some big Titanic names that never won an Oscar. And it just kind of goes to show that maybe the end all be all is not winning an Oscar.
Yeah, I would say back, especially if somebody like Ingmar Bergman, being a foreign film art house director, probably didn't necessarily. I mean, especially when did you say that the foreign film category was established? 57.
Yeah, 57.
Yeah, so there was a good time period of where some of his best movies weren't even in the conversation because they were foreign films.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, since then, I mean,
Yeah,
shoot,
there've been some modern people who've never won an Oscar who have
yeah.
been nominated several times. Glenn Close has never won an Oscar.
Which
She's been
hopefully, maybe she
She
has a
may win
chance
this
this year.
year. She may win this year. Amy Adams is notoriously one of the current actresses who keeps getting nominated a lot. She's never wins an Oscar.
Dafoe has just got nominated again this year. He has never won.
Tom Cruise, Harrison Ford has never won an Oscar, but he's only been nominated once. So
Yeah,
Joaquin Phoenix never won an Oscar. Johnny Depp, is probably never going to happen. Sigourney Weaver's never won an Oscar. Big name. Edward Norton, Annette Bening, who I think is a fantastic actress and has never won. Ed Harris, who's kind of more of a character actor, has never won. One of our favorites, Michelle Williams, keeps getting nominated and she keeps not winning.
Yeah.
And it's getting increasingly frustrating.
What about Viggo? Viggo Mortensen hasn't won yet.
I don't believe he has.
No, he's been nominated a few times.
He has been nominated a few times.
Eastern Promises, Captain Fantastic. This year for Green Book.
That is true.
I don't think he's going to win this year either, but you know, he's going to give. He's a great performer. Viggo's probably one of my favorites today. Jake Gyllenhaal still hasn't won yet, and he's one of my favorites.
That happens. He's still young though.
Oh, of course, he's still got time.
He's still young.
But I mean, he's put out some fantastic performances. Like I said earlier, Nightcrawler, man, didn't even get nominated.
Yeah.
Crime.
Ian McKellen, I don't believe has ever won an Oscar. Ray Fiennes has never won an Oscar. The late great Alan Rickman never won an Oscar. It's kind of sad, actually. The actor who just died never won an Oscar and probably should have.
Bruno Ganz.
Oh, Bruno Ganz. Yeah, he literally just passed away.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking of Albert Finney.
Oh, yeah.
Probably should have won for Big Fish. He's amazing in that movie. Nobody talks about the movie Big Fish, the Tim Burton film. And it's one of Tim Burton's best films. And it sticks out because it doesn't have his typical usual stuff that's in it. Maybe that's why I like it so much. But yeah, I love that film, and the film stars Ewan McGregor and the late Albert Finney, and just a very fantastic film.
Well, let's get to a positive note.
We gotta get positive here.
What are some of your favorite Oscar movies that have won Best Picture? I know your number one is.
Oh yeah, I mean, just go with, I guess, just cut through the fat here and go straight to the top. Return of the King.
Yeah.
We're never going to see a fantasy film win 11 Oscars again.
No,
I don't think we're going to see a film win 11 Oscars again, because the way the Academy is going right now is things are kind of divvied up. The most a film will win will be
maybe 3 or 4, maybe.
3 or 4. If somebody makes a run with the technical awards, perhaps that'll happen. But everything else is just, not.
They like to spread the love around as much as they can.
Yeah, and typically genre films in general don't do well, and they definitely don't win Best Picture. That's why last year's The Shape of Water is so unique, is because it's a film that is a mixture of several genres. It's a romance, it's a fantasy, it's a horror, it's a monster movie, and it's so many different. It's a political movie. It's so many different things. It's a
movie about a mute woman having sex with a fish man.
Oh, breaking it down.
I mean, it's weird, which is awesome. I can't wait to get 25 years from now and tell somebody, yeah, you remember that movie that won Best Picture back in 2017 or whatever? The damn Shape of Water fish movie. That's pretty awesome.
We are, Cinema Discovery Project, so we got to go back in time. But some of my favorite,
my favorite is It Happened One Night.
Oh, okay.
That's one of my favorites.
Back. You go way back to.
It's one of the few. The Big Five.
Yes, it did.
The Best Picture, Best Actor, Actress.
Yeah. It won Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Picture,
Director,
Best Director, and I think Best Screenplay. Yeah, it's an all-time movie. I think it's the literal bedrock in which all
Of all
romantic
comedies.
comedies
Yeah.
are made. Not made, but all romantic comedies take from this movie. It has
The
all
template's there.
the
Yeah.
templates there. I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean, it's back in a time when comedies would win. Like it didn't really happen anymore.
yeah, comedies typically don't even get nominated
Yeah.
now, and if they do, they have to be more comedy dramas or
They're not
dramedies as
like
they're
straight
called.
up comedies. They're like, yeah, they're mixed with a lot more drama. Yeah.
Um, some of my, Gone with the Wind is an all-time classic that won Best Picture 1939, and what is interesting, Rebecca, which is one of I believe Hitchcock's first American film,
Yeah. Yeah.
or at least film made in Hollywood, won Best Picture, but he didn't win an Oscar for it because he was not one of the producers. The directors back then were not the producers of their films typically. The films were, produced by the studios. So it would be the studio heads would be the ones who have their names as producers on the films. You know what I mean? So he did not get the credit for that.
Really like
Um
I really
yeah,
like
go on.
another good one is Best Years of Our Lives.
Yeah,
William.
that's an amazing movie.
Yeah.
Casablanca is one of my favorite films of all
Oh yeah, I
time.
know.
I
Yeah.
mean, I believe you've talked about how much you like The Lost Weekend.
Lost
Uh,
Weekend. Billy Wilder.
Billy
Another
Wilder,
good Billy Wilder is The Apartment. Won Best Picture.
yeah, one Best Picture 1960, starring Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine. All About Eve is another film that I really really love. I think Betty Davis should have won the Oscar that year. She didn't, over Judy Holliday in Born Yesterday, which is a film that
Yeah,
I
yeah.
really like. What
Lawrence
is
of Arabia.
Lawrence of Arabia is one of my favorites of all time. That movie is epic beyond epic. What is actually considered an upset win is An American in Paris. It was an upset
Haven't
win
seen
because a lot of people thought that A Place in the Sun was supposed to win, directed by George Stevens, or A Streetcar Named Desire, which was
that.
Eli Kazan's film, and which was starring Marlon Brando and Vivian Lee. That film is incredible.
Well,
Of course, we would know of what would happen a few years later
On the Waterfront would
on the
win.
waterfront, 1954. That is, literally Marlon Brando's breakout film. That film
Yeah.
is, an all-time classic, probably being shown in every film school, every acting school on the planet.
And there's
What is
the
interesting about
Godfather Part 1 and 2.
part 1 and 2 did win.
I'm a preferred to 2. I don't know what you think.
I like the first one. I'm one of the people who like the first one more. I don't know why.
I like 2 because I like the parallel stories.
I do like the parallel stories. What I love about the first one is maybe I like it because it's the rise of Michael Corleone, as opposed to, we're seeing him already in his crime boss, prime, if you will. I kind of like the degeneration of a human being to get to that point where you become the Godfather. You know what I mean? And it's a much tighter film than I think the second one is, because the second one is, like you said, balancing both the past and the present.
Yeah,
Lots of things happening in it.
Yeah, I think I like the second one more because I like how it uses the dual storylines of showing the rise of the original played. I'm not blanking on the name of the character, but Brando's character,
right? Vito Corleone.
Vito Corleone, and played by Robert De Niro, showing that parallel story of how he came up in it and how he became the man he was, who was a little bit more level-headed, and then Michael becomes more of an iron fist ruler of sorts,
right?
And showing the kind of almost in a way showing the tragic kind of descent of him. So yeah, I mean, I mean they're both great, but
both great.
I kind of find the second one a little bit more interesting. But
another one that I love and that I have to mention is a smaller film, and that is the film of Marty, starring Ernest Borgnine, which came out the year after On the Waterfront one, and it was actually considered a bit of an upset win because it's such a small film, and it is a film that I think is incredibly relatable to me personally. I think it's incredibly modern in many of its aspects as well. And I just think Ernest Borgnine is fantastic in the movie. You have other films like Bridge on the River Kwai, Ben-Hur, which is yet again a gigantic epic, William Wyler's gigantic epic. Um, The Apartment, which you meant. West Side Story is actually probably my favorite musical of all time. I think that
Spielberg's
film.
about to remake it.
I know Spielberg's about to remake it. The cinematography in that movie, in West Side Story, I think is amazing. So underrated. The choreography, I think, is incredible as well. And the story is basically Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
So people familiar with that will
What
like
are
it.
some of your more modern ones you like?
Let me shoot back up. How modern are we talking here?
I mean, let's start from the '90s. Like, how
All
about
right.
like Silence of the Lambs?
Okay, Silence of the Lambs I really like. And that's another film that's a genre film and a horror film that you probably won't really see be nominated
Yeah.
again. I mean, it's a cannibalistic serial killer film. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a dark and dirty
It's
and
of
at
its
times
time.
disgusting film.
It's of its time because in that time we were having a lot of things with true crime going on, and I think that maybe it just hit at a certain point where it was very relevant, and it kind of defines the procedural, in a way. That movie kind
Right.
of popularizes that procedural template for movies.
Also, coincidentally, that year, just looking at the nominees from that year, you had Silence of the Lambs, Beauty and the Beast,
Yeah,
Bugsy.
which was I think was the first animated movie of that time, or maybe of all time, to get nominated, right?
Maybe I would have to see if um Snow White was nominated. I'm not sure, but you may be right in that. I know. Well, the reason why it was nominated is because there was no Best Animated Feature category
Yeah.
yet.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I think it might have been the first animated movie to get nominated.
I think you may be right. But other films that were nominated that year, JFK and The Prince of Tides. It's a very eclectic group of films.
Yeah,
Couldn't
yeah.
be more diverse. But other, 90s films, Unforgiven, I
It's a good
think
one.
is the last of the westerns in mainstream critical arena. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Because the western used to be the most popular genre of film around. 30s, 40s, 50s. In the 60s, it started to change when you got Sergio Leone's spaghetti westerns. You had Sam Peckinpah doing the Wild Bunch. You had a change in the American Western, and you also had Clint Eastwood come along at the time and was doing his own versions of the spaghetti westerns here in the United States, in American versions, Hollywood versions. And so I think that's kind of the last gasp of the Western was, I think, Unforgiven. And it's not that there haven't been great Western films since, just never, winning or getting nominated for Best Picture. Yeah, I mean, and then you really didn't get a Western nominated for Best Picture until True Grit, I think, in 2010 with the Coen brothers. I'd have to really look that up, but you can make a case that No Country for Old Men is a bit of a Western.
It's kind of a Western, yeah.
It's kind of a Western. Even then, that was, what, 2007?
2008, 2007,
yeah, somewhere around there. But other films, Braveheart was one of the first rated R films I ever saw when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And that was when Mel Gibson was in his prime as an actor and director.
The thing during the '90s was letting actor directors win everything. Kevin Costner done it
about it. Yeah,
and yeah, that was the thing.
And I'll say this: as much as The English Patient is not a beloved Best Picture winner, I actually really like the film. Do I think it's better than the other nominees? The other nominees being Fargo, Jerry Maguire, Secrets and Lies by Mike Leigh, and Shine? Perhaps not.
Yeah.
But I still think The English Patient is a great film by the late underrated director Anthony Minghella. So yeah, that's my two takes on that. And then we finish out the decade with Titanic, Shakespeare in Love, which probably should.
It's kind of controversial, but I mean, I've grown.
It's not a bad movie. Straight up, it's not a bad movie. Is it, like I said, similar to what I said about English Patient? Is it better than Life is Beautiful or Saving Private Ryan or even The Thin Red Line or Elizabeth? Probably not.
Probably not. But I mean,
probably not.
It's close enough that it doesn't bother me, honestly.
To be honest, it bothers me a little bit because Thin Red Line's amazing. Life is Beautiful is incredible. What is interesting that year, going back to what I was saying about upsets, apparently Roberto Benigni winning for Best Actor was a bit of an upset, and I'm like, not if you've seen Life is Beautiful. It's not. That's an amazing movie with amazing performance. But of course, the decade ends with one of your favorite films,
Oh,
American Beauty. by Sam Mendes.
Kind of threw up in my mouth a little bit.
Steven does not like that movie.
It's just so forgettable.
Talk about a movie
weird.
Talk about a movie that hasn't done well in hindsight.
It's not aged well. I don't think. I've heard a lot of people
considering what we know.
Now.
Yeah, considering what we know now and our kind of perception of sexuality and its specifically sexuality between younger and older people and how creepy it literally is, and the way that film depicts it is not aging well currently at all.
And it doesn't help that Kevin Spacey stars in it. Yeah.
Kevin Spacey's career has kind of gone into the dump, and there's kind of been a reevaluation of.
Sure. I don't really hold that against the movie, but it doesn't help when that's in the back of your mind.
No, it doesn't help now. And then of course the 2000s is an interesting time because we got
Gladiator,
the return of the sword and sandal epic in Gladiator, which everybody tried to mimic afterwards, and nobody ever reached it. We've talked about that before. A Beautiful Mind, I think, is an amazing movie. Ron Howard, I think, is an underrated director. And even that year in general, I think, is a strong year of films. A Beautiful Mind, Gosford Park by the late, great Robert Altman, In the Bedroom, which is a film no one talks about, but it's actually a really good film. And, of course, you have Fellowship of the Ring, my favorite, and then Moulin Rouge, which is actually really, really good. Baz Luhrmann, the one thing you can say about Baz Luhrmann is his films are ambitious as hell. They really, really are.
I mean, kind of skimming. We should skim over some of this stuff. But
skim over, the Lord of the Rings, $1 Million Baby, Crash. Come on now.
Well, I mean, like Clint Eastwood had a big thing here in the mid.
Yeah, he had a big resurgence.
Yeah. He started getting nominated and winning for everything. Like every year is like, oh, when's Clint Eastwood's next movie gonna get nominated?
Yeah,
like he had $1 Million Baby, he had Mystic River, he had. Just huge, just every, 2 letters from Iwo Jima,
the Letters from Iwo Jima is an underrated film from him. I think it's probably one of his best.
And the other one that was the companion piece didn't get nominated, but Flags of Our Fathers.
It did not. Coincidentally, I actually read that book, and I was super excited for the movie. We have to also mention, I mean, just for us personally, The Departed, I know, is an uber popular movie, especially up here in the Northeast. Like, I live an hour south of Boston. And when it comes to anything film related with Boston, it's super popular here. That's probably why Mark Wahlberg is super popular here, is because, there's that, that hometown favorite type of mentality, and Departed being set in Boston. Mark Wahlberg's in it, Matt Damon's in it, local guys. Jack Nicholson's playing a version of Whitey Bulger, famous, mobster from Boston. Maybe, I think it was Whitey Bulger, but anyway, and like that movie was the first time Scorsese's film had won Best Picture, I believe. I believe this was the first and only time he's won Best Director, and this is 2006, mind you, and he's been working since like the late 60s on movies.
Right.
So that was kind of a big moment. And of course, the Coen brothers had No Country, Slumdog Millionaire. How do you feel about that movie?
I love that movie.
You love that movie.
I love that movie. I think, sure. It's a little bit like, you could say overly sentimental at times,
right.
But like, I mean, I find it to be a very unique movie, and I love Danny Boyle. I think Danny Boyle is like one of the most underrated directors today. Like people see his movies and they're always super unique and things, but I don't hear anybody talk about him ever. Like
he has an incredibly diverse filmography. If you look at it,
and his new movie coming out yesterday, looks awesome.
You love it. You are a big Beatles fan.
Yeah, so I mean, his work in this movie, the year it came out, it was like, oh look, it's the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire movie, But and I even said that at first, but then I saw it and I'm like, dude, this is super entertaining. Such an emotional story of these children that grew up in. And I think it was somewhere in Bengali,
India.
In India, and kind of growing up in the slums, and then kind of seeing these 2 brothers get torn apart, and then one kind of growing up into the crime element, one growing up in kind of the normal reality, and then kind of it all clashing together with a woman in the middle, like a love in the middle, and of course it's set around the Indian version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and he's asked these questions, and as he gets told these questions, it sends him back into his past, and you find out how he got the answer to the question. And I think it's a brilliant movie. I really liked it.
Okay. That
And
was
you
a
don't
lovely, that
you
was a
don't
lovely rant. I
you
like the
don't like it.
movie. I like the movie, but I think the other films in that it was nominated against, I think, are better. That's just me.
What other movies?
Curious Case of Benjamin Button,
Not better.
Frost Nixon.
That's good argument. Yeah,
Milk is really good.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, you haven't seen Milk? Gus Van Sant's Milk. It's really good. The Reader, with Kate Winslet.
Yeah, it's okay.
But I do want to mention the one that won in 2009 because I think it's historically important.
Yeah.
And that is The Hurt Locker, because it is directed by Catherine Bigelow. And shocker here, Steven, women haven't really been given that much love by the Academy Awards when it comes to being nominated. When it comes to being nominated
for best costume.
I'll say this though, and something I do want to mention right now is the best costuming award should just be called the Edith Head Award, because Edith Head was nominated 25 times for best costuming, and she won 8 times. And I'm pretty sure there's an Edith Head building named after her at either Universal or Paramount currently, because like she's so famous for just making like all the costuming for all the major films in Hollywood back in the day. But outside of things like that, which of course have their merit, women haven't been really nominated for best director. Last year, this is going to be maybe not shocking for anyone out there. Last year was the first time a female cinematographer was nominated for an Oscar ever.
Great.
And it's the only category of all of the Oscar categories that a female hadn't been nominated in before.
Yeah.
Outside of Best Actor and Best Supporting Actor and stuff like that. But yeah, that was the first time. And that's just like mind-boggling to me because it was 2018, and it just shows how far we still have to come for representation in the Oscars, and that's a whole thing of it in and of itself. If you're curious, the person who was nominated was Rachel Morrison, who was the cinematographer for Dee Reese's film Mudbound, and which is a fantastic film. I believe it's available on Netflix right now. I think it's a Netflix movie. So she was nominated for that. And that movie had a few award nominations as well. So moving along to kind of more modern stuff, this has to be mentioned because it kind of goes to what we were saying before. The King's Speech winning is considered an upset over films like The Social Network, over films like 127 Hours, The Fighter, Inception, True Grit. I mean,
look, it's not a bad movie. But
no, it's not. But that's an Oscar.
Not as impactful as some of them other movies.
People can't see me right now, but I'm putting up air quotes. That is a Oscar movie. Yeah. Biopic.
It's showing the Oscars age. Yeah. Yes,
and that's kind of what they're trying to debunk now. Not debunk, but they're trying to change the voting body of the Oscars.
Get the Oscars come to bring them into the times, the new age.
They're trying to bring, because movies like just taking that year, just as an example, Social Network is a younger person's movie. Inception, younger person's movie. You know what I mean? So to really get someone into the times, that really shows how far back they are. And they've tried now to introduce a lot more diversity into the voting body of the Academy.
Yeah.
There are thousands of members in the Academy, and you're typically in there forever. So they just keep getting older and older, and the demographics of the voting body aren't great, but they're getting better. They're typically older people, white people, and nothing wrong with being white, just saying, it doesn't help with the diversity at all. And it's just, they're getting younger people, they're getting more a minority presence within the Academy, and you're seeing that change, I think, taking effect now, specifically with the movies that were nominated and won last year, and some of the movies that are nominated this year. And that's kind of changing. And a lot of those changes are a response to what has happened within the last 9 or 10 years in the in the Academy Awards ceremony, because the following year you had The Artist win. You know what I mean? You had back-to-back years. You had The King's Speech and The Artist, two more, you know, films that are going to speak to the masses to a certain extent. They'll speak to maybe people like us, cinephiles, but they're not going to speak to a larger audience. And if that's the people you want watching your telecast, you've got to give them something they want to see, but you don't want to sacrifice, just putting in anything just for ratings. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
that's why that popular category is garbage.
I think something like Shape of Water is a good example of that really happy medium. The happy medium between art and also something that everybody likes, for the most part. I mean, last year when we got Get Out, Get Out is a great example of something that the mass liked, but also artistically it was great. And we just need more. It
won Best Screenplay. Yeah,
we need more people to take movies like that more seriously, and it's.
And I think with the expansion of the Best Picture Oscar category, you can do that. You just have to put the right films in there. You know what I mean? That's what you have to, like last year, like you were saying, Shape of Water. Shape of Water is a larger type of movie. It's done by Guillermo del Toro, who a lot of people are aware of who he is. You also had a film like Dunkirk. Christopher Nolan, one of the most popular directors working today, regardless of the films he's making, what category or genre they're in. And you had a movie like Get Out, yet again, super popular movie. But you also had your prestige movies as well. The Phantom Thread by Paul Thomas Anderson, which is going to speak to, the more, cinephile type crowd like us, who know who PTA is and are fans of him. And you also had The Post, Steven Spielberg, big name director. People know who Steven Spielberg is. He's made some of the most well-known films of the last 40 years. And you also had indie films in there as well, in Lady Bird, and I would even say Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. I consider an indie film as well, regardless of the well-known cast that was in it. So you had that diversity last year. This year, I think they've even taken a step further with including Black Panther as one of the nominees.
Definitely.
Getting a major genre tentpole film in there. Now, there's an argument whether it should be in there, but that's more subjective than anything. But even with having that in there, you still have another 7 nominees that you can utilize to put, maybe more Oscar-type films, which they have. They put in The Favorite, which is, a film by an art house director like Yorgos Lanthimos. You have Roma, Alfonso Cuarón, who's, making artful masterpieces every single time, and then you have more
crowd pleasing, like Green Book and Bohemian
Rhapsody. Even A Star Is Born is another
crowd.
If you want to put in a political film, you've got Vice in there, because Hollywood and Oscars are political and all that stuff. Black Klansman is another film that's political, but is made by a director that is pretty well known in Spike Lee. I mean, he's at every single New York Knicks basketball game at Madison Square Garden. People know who he is. So there's progress being made within the Academy Awards to make it more inclusive, to make it more diverse, but it has to keep going forward. And what the Academy Awards need to do is not go absurdly too far, which I think they're trying to do right now by nixing categories for the live broadcast, or not having a host, or introducing another unnecessary category.
Yeah, I mean they're stuck in a hard place, because part of it is it's like, okay, so if we really try to cut down this show with just what we do, the thing is you got to also think about the people that are at the actual award ceremony. True. You want to entertain them too, so to bring them in to just be like, oh, here you go. Here you go. Thank you, sir. Here you go. Thank you. Dumb and Dumber. Here you go. Thank you, sir. And if you did that, then of course the people that all showed up for that big award ceremony is gonna be like, man, I came here for like an hour-long ceremony. That was not worth it, because you're getting all these stars to come into one place for this big event that's basically for them, to pat each other on the backs.
It very much is. That's kind of what Louis B. Mayer's original, there was a quote in there that I can't remember, what it's like, if you'll give them like an award, they'll show up or something like that.
Yeah.
It was very condescending towards the actors and directors and whatnot. But there's a storied history of prestige with the Oscars as well that I don't think has helped it too much, because when you have prestige, you separate yourself above
You're
everyone.
saying you're elite.
You're saying you're
above
elite. You're
Yeah.
above everything. And to a certain extent, the Oscars have been that way. If you think of all of the iconic people who have won Oscars: Marlon Brando, Betty Davis, Joan Crawford, Katharine Hepburn, Clark Gable. I believe he's won an Oscar, but or even just associate with the Oscar being nominated: Clark Gable, David Niven, like Laurence Olivier, everybody. You know what I mean? There's a prestige within, and there's that prestige within Hollywood that is considered to be elite and above and separated from the rest of us. And now they're trying to get back down to the rest of us.
Yeah, in today's culture, people don't like elitists.
Right.
They like everybody to be on, which to an extent, yeah, I agree. Sure, I don't like anybody pretending, acting like they're better than me, but
right.
There, I mean, there's, I honestly, does it really matter? Like, if somebody wants to hold certain things to a higher standard and give awards out for it, let them do it. Who cares? I mean, it's not bothering anybody.
Right.
I think people are just a little too sensitive about everything these days.
That is part of it as well. But them trying to get back down and connect with the general society is being very difficult, because like it's like for so long
they're condescending everybody while doing it.
Yeah, for so long you've been creating this air of elitism above us, and now you want us to come back and watch you hand out gold statues and shit.
Popular film category for you.
It's like and of course the landscape in which people consume things now when it comes to television or movies or music is so much different now. Hardly anyone sits down for an appointed time to watch something, unless it's something that is really, really important. Something like a sporting event,
episodic show or one big event that they're more interested in, like the Super Bowl. But like, yeah, they'll binge watch something that's hours and hours long, but it's episodic and it's more exciting.
Well, right, but I mean, even like popular television isn't super, super popular. Maybe something like Game of Thrones on HBO, but even then, that's a prestige thing. Like, that's a premium network. You know what I mean? Nobody sits down at 8 o'clock at night anymore to watch, a sitcom on CBS.
Well,
Many do.
A lot less.
It's a lot less, and dramas are even less now. And people, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again. You need to give people access to these nominated movies easy, make it more easier, make it more efficient, make it more easier, because some people still don't know what that movie is or have seen that movie.
Maybe team up with streaming services and do it for a limited time, release these nominated movies.
Or make these movies come out on Blu-ray or DVD or to streaming platforms quicker, because one of the most, quote unquote, popular movies of 2018, whether you like the movie or not, it made, hundreds of $millions of dollars. Bohemian Rhapsody just came out on Blu-ray last week. And that is like a week, like 2 weeks before the ceremony. A Star is Born, one of the most, is coming out this week. And granted, you could get it 2 weeks ago via a streaming platform, but still, what is that, a month? But I'm barely a month before it comes out. There's so much to consume out there. People are gonna miss it. They're gonna miss things like that. So you have to make these things available earlier, quicker, and easier, so people will want to tune in to see if their quote unquote favorite film is going to win something. You know what I mean? There's that detachment as well. So there's a whole bunch of problems going on with the Academy, and I don't know how they're gonna fix it.
That's obviously a coordination with distribution. That's a whole other
mess right now.
Other thing, if you really want your movie to get more of that Oscar push, then that's up to the studio to make that happen.
And then you got to coordinate with the theaters now, and there's a whole fight between the theaters and the studios about distribution, because I think the studios want to get them out earlier, but it's the theaters I think that are kind of
They
resistant.
should make it so they should direct it to a streaming service, and maybe that could be like a damn channel for like a limited time. Oscar nominated movies and things, and you go to that channel and it's like and you can watch any of them. Like that would be perfect.
They should really, especially with the short films, release that stuff online. Put it on YouTube. Put it somewhere where people can see these movies.
Like because in the theaters,
because if you're gonna post them on, if you're gonna take the time like they're going to announce the nominees, give out the award speech or whatever, it'd be nice if people had access to the short films in order to watch them. Same thing with documentaries as well. Documentaries is such a rather niche genre of film right now that it needs accessibility badly. You know what I mean? It needs it more so.
It's hard to find good ones in theaters,
and it's tough to find documentaries that come to theaters, local theaters.
This year was actually an exception. There was a lot of good ones in theaters.
There were.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean it's an ongoing. This is an ongoing thing, and honestly I'm very interested to see how this Oscars turns out this year, and of course what they're going to do moving forward. What other new surprise things do they want to try to throw at us?
I'm very curious how this ceremony is going to go next Sunday. Because
and I think
no host, who knows?
No host, who knows what's
I
wonder
who's going to start the show. Like, who are we going to get out there?
Are we going to get the president of the Academy come out and say
that
something?
guy? Coincidentally, I believe his name is John Bailey. He's actually a cinematographer.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude,
get rid of the cinematographer category in the main broadcast.
He's like, oh yeah, my fellow cinematographers, they'll love being relegated to nowhere.
But yeah, I think next episode will be right before the Oscars, so we won't be able to talk about it on the next episode. But the episode after, I think we'll probably discuss a little bit of the winners and some surprises and whatnot. There's always surprises.
Oh right, and who knows who's going to win Best Picture this year? My hope is Roma. That's just me.
Yeah, I hope Roma wins because I don't want Bohemian Rhapsody to win.
I don't want Bohemian Rhapsody to win, and I don't want Green Book to win.
I don't want Vice to win. So I would say if I'm taking something other than Roma, I'm probably going to say The Favorite because it's a unique movie, and that's one I would prefer to see. I mean, Black Panther's, and you know what? Black Klansman's another one. I'd take Black Klansman.
If Black Panther wins, it would be historic if Black Panther would win.
Even though it would be bullshit, it would be historic. I mean, it's a good movie, but it's not the best movie of the year, I don't think.
I don't think it's even the best within its genre, but I think it's really good.
Yeah, it's still a really good movie.
Yeah, I did review on it on my channel. It was definitely one of the best from the MCU in my opinion. But yeah, so when we come back next time, this will all be wrapped up. So who knows what's going to happen. It'll be wrapped
up. Fortunately, we do our episodes usually on Saturdays or Sundays, so we won't be able to talk about it right after. But unless we decide to do some short little thing, I don't know. But we'll have a whole different episode next week, and then the week after we'll be able to give you kind of like our impressions. And yeah. So that's going to end our episode here on the Cinema Discovery Project. We hope you enjoyed listening. Andrew, where can you be found?
You can find me on Twitter at Capzilla06, as well as my YouTube channel, Capzilla Productions.
And you can find me on Facebook, Stephen Billings. You can find me posting all the goodies I buy on my Instagram under the Cinema Discovery Project title. Also have us on YouTube. You can get the audio there. And then, of course, on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Podbean. And that will be it for this episode. Thanks for listening once again. Share us around. And hey, keep on watching them movies.
I know I will.